Hey, good morning, guys. It's Thursday, March 26th, and I just want to give you a recap of where we are, some of the key points from 9.1 through 9.4. Look at some of the 9.4 word problems that maybe you're struggling with, and we'll go from there. Okay, so doing a quick recap of 9.1, 2, 3, and 4. And 9.1, okay, looking at our worksheet that we did, we talked about in 9.1 a maximum or minimum point, and that's the vertex. All right, identify the vertex, just finding that guy right there, putting in order, putting in values, sketching parabolas, and then we got more detailed in 9.2. In 9.2, you were asked to, if you were asked to solve a quadratic or graph a quadratic y equal negative 3x squared minus 6x minus 8, the first thing you want to do is find the axis of symmetry, which is going to be the opposite of b over 2a, right? There's a, there's b, there's c. So the opposite of negative 6 is 6 over 2 times negative 3 would be negative 6. We get negative 1. So some of you guys struggled with that. So the equation for the axis of symmetry is actually x equals negative 1. Okay, that's the equation. Now, to find the vertex, we take that guy, we plug it in for x to find the y. I did that right here. Notice I use parentheses, and I actually on the calculator plug it in just like that. I hit enter. Okay, I did that one mentally, but I hit enter, I get negative 5. So that's the vertex then, negative 1, negative 5. So if I'm going to sketch a graph of this, I would create my x and y axis. At negative 1, there's my line of symmetry. Right, at negative 1, it's that x equals negative 1. I plot the ordered pair, the vertex, negative 1, negative 5. A couple other things to recognize. This guy is a negative value. It's going to be opening downward. All right, and then I just create a table, and I plug points in. Like I told you guys before, if you plug points in and are off your paper, oh well, don't worry about it. 0 is always an easy point to plug in, which, by the way, there's my y-intercept. So I have 0, negative 8, that should be. Let me put a negative sign here. Blink. 0, negative 8. Because of symmetry, that's the value of the line of symmetry. If I'm 1 away here, I'm 1 away on the other side, so there's a point. I plugged in the ordered pair. I plugged in 1 to do the math, all right, because I looked at this, and so you figure by next, let's see where 1 is. It's way down here at negative 17, so I don't have to plot that. That's off the paper. I have enough information. I just create my parabola. Typically, I would like to get my vertex and 2 points. If I can't find it because it's too far off the paper, then I just let it be. All right, don't worry about it. All right. The other thing that we mentioned too is when we want to see how wide something is, we look at the a value. The closer it is to 0, or the smaller the absolute value of that number is, the wider it gets. The further it is from 0, so the bigger this number is on the positive side, or further away from 0 on the negative side, the narrower it gets. Okay, that was the 9.1 and 9.2. 9.3 was a special case sort of here, solving quadratics when there was no b term, there was a b equals 0. And we can actually factor this to solve too, which we learned in 9.4. But what we did in 9.3 was, let's say you had an equation that looked like this, where there was no just h term, right? B was 0. We can solve that by using the technique of getting the x or the variable isolated and then taking the square root. So in this case, I just added 12 to both sides. I have 1/3 h squared equals 12. So to get h squared by itself, I multiply both sides by 3. I get h squared equals 36 and take the square root. Don't forget, when you take the square root of a value, we introduce the square root. We have to account for the positive and negative root. On the edge elastic, some of you guys forgot that second value. The square root of 36 is not just positive 6, but it's also negative 6. And the other thing that some of you guys got wrong on that edge elastics was that you thought there was no solution because I think it was negative 3x squared plus, I don't know what it was over here, something like 36 equals 0. When you brought that over, you go, oh, that's negative, that can't happen. Well, it can happen because this guy was negative. So once you divide it by negative 3, okay, we ended up with x squared equaled 12, and then it would be plus or minus square root of 12, okay? So you won't get solutions if you when you solve it, you end up with a negative value. That's when there's no solution, okay? But make sure that you get a negative value on that side for there to be no solution. Then from 9.3, we went to 9.4, which was solving quadratics by factoring. So hopefully your factoring skills, are still strong. So we have an example here, 3x squared minus 20x equals negative 12. We're going to use the zero product property. So what that tells us is we want to get everything set equal to 0, so bring the negative 12 to the other side. Once we get that set equal to 0, we used our AC method, or whatever method that you use. In this case, I'd use AC. And I multiply A times C, 36, right? A times C to get negative 20. I find my two factors. I want negative 18, negative 2, plug them in, do my factor by grouping. Remember, when you factor this back guy, if there's a negative value here, you take that negative sign out. We have 3x minus 2 times x plus 6 equals 0. And now what the zero product property tells us is if we multiply two things together and get 0, either this guy's 0 or this guy's 0. And we just solve those simple little linear equations, right? So if I solve this, I'm going to get x equals 6. If I solve this, I would add 2 and divide by 3. So I would get 6 or positive 2/3, right? When I solve that guy right there, add 2, divide by 3. There's my solution. Okay, and notice that that's not an ordered pair. Sometimes these brackets, sometimes they put the answer like this, 6 comma 2/3 with these brackets. That's not an ordered pair. Okay, that's a solution set. All right, understand that. And then lastly, a couple of things from the 9-4 paper here. Let's see. Again, you have all these answers. They are on the e-board for you to go through. Let's see. So, I think I did some of those with you guys. That there. Right, if we have it in factored form already, we just go ahead and set each factor equal to 0 and solve. I don't need to put that out. It's already set equal to 0. So either that guy equals 0 or that guy equals 0. Do the math. In these word problems, I know volume is length times width times height. So that they tell me the width is W, the length is W plus 2, and the height is 2. So I just plug all that stuff in there. And now when I solve these word problems, I got to get this I basically got to get this into a quadratic set equal to 0. So I multiply 2 times W, then that value times this, right? Get this to 2W squared plus 4W, bring the 48 over. Now, once I get it to that form, I can factor using any technique I want. I recognize I can take a factor of 2 out. I'm left with this, factor this guy down, and then I set each of the factors that have a variable in them equal to 0. So this guy would be negative 6, this guy would be positive 4. In this case, we have an extraneous answer. Extraneous just means it works in the math problem, but in the real life problem, it doesn't. I can't have a width of negative 6. Even though it works in the math problem, I don't really want that answer. So the width of this guy is going to be 4. And if I plug 4 in, you'll see that it works. All right. Again, some of the more challenging problems in the back for number 28. It tells me the area is 234 yards squared. It gives me a length and a width, and I know area is length times width. So I do this times that, right? X times 2x minus 8 equals my area. I just distribute over here, bring the 234 over, get it set equal to 0, and then I factor that guy any which way I can. I recognize that I could take a factor of 2 out, so if I divide both sides by 2, or just take that factor of 2 out, I get x squared minus 4x minus 17 equals 0, which makes this so much easier to factor. You can see I started thinking to do AC method, but I recognize to take that 2 out. And once I factor this, it took me a minute to find two numbers that multiply to get negative 17, to combine to get negative 4. Grabbed the calculator, checked it out. So I ended up getting x minus 13 times x plus 9. X is either going to equal 13 or negative 9. Once again, that negative 9 is an extraneous answer. Don't really need it for this problem. It works in the math problem. Okay, if I were to plug that in, you'll see it actually works. All right, but 13 is what we end up wanting here. That's going to be our width. So you can see the same process happens if you're given a triangle. Area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So I did base times height times a half equals 20. So in this case, I don't like having that half there. It kind of throws me off. So I just multiplied both sides by 2. Think about that. If this times a half equals 20, then this times this is going to equal 40. I just multiplied both sides by 2. All right, and now I just distributed here. I got x squared plus 3x brought the 40 over equals 0. You see the process every time. I'm getting that quadratic set equal to 0. Factor, x plus 8 times x minus 5 equals 0. So x equals -8 or +5. And once again, -8 is an extraneous answer, so I don't really want that guy. My answer here would be 5. And then lastly, before I let you guys go, a couple of the problems on the back here. They're all pretty much the same at this point. We're going to factor set equal to 0. So the one I struggled with at first, it took me a little while, is this number 2. A triangular shaped wall has a base of 2x plus 4 and a height of x plus 3, and the area is 56. So I did it's a triangle. 1/2 base times height equals 56. Once again, I multiplied both sides by 2, all right, to get rid of that half. So I had this guy equaled 112. Foiled this out, and this is where I was making a mistake and getting stuck. I foiled it out, and I forgot to do 4 times 3 and get 12 and bring that over. I was making a mistake here. So I had 2x squared plus 10x minus 100 equals 0. And now I just do my AC method. Two numbers that multiply to get -200 to combine to get 10 would be 20 and -10. Once I plug all that in, I finally was able to do that properly. Okay. And I ended up getting, what did I get here? I did it separate. I did it a little bit differently on this side, actually. Instead of multiplying by 2, I distributed it in. Okay, the second time I did it, I said, well, let's just distribute to 1/2. I saw these both were both positive, or even, I'm sorry. So I got x plus 2 times x plus 3 equaled 56. It was so much easier. And then when I brought the, I foiled this out, brought the 56 over, got x squared plus 5x minus 50 equals 0. I factored that. So my solutions were either, when I set that equal to 0, is 5 or -10. Again, -10 is an extraneous answer, so I don't want that one. X is 5. All right, and if you want to freeze it there and take a picture of how I did the rest of it, that's fine. So that'll set us up for today. Tomorrow, I guess we will start getting into completing the square. Keep plugging away on this stuff. And at this point, you guys are doing a real good job. I'm checking your work on the edge elastics, checking the work on the 9-1 to 9-4 practice that I put on Classroom. You guys are doing a nice job with it, all right? So keep up the good work, and I will talk to you tomorrow.